Demonology Warlocks are masters of demons, constantly summoning Dreadstalkers and Wild Imps while commanding their Felguard. This spec revolves around Soul Shards as it's your primary resource. You both generate and spin them across your toolkit to fuel a continuous flow of demon summons and empowered abilities. The playstyle is less about rigid rotations and more about managing a fluid priority list. Procs like Demonic Core and time your cooldowns to maximize how many demons are active when Demonic Tyrant hits the field. Alright, starting us out here with the strengths and weaknesses. Starting out with the strengths. So very durable with strong survivability tools across the board. You're also going to have high talent variety that adapts well into different group compositions. Strong solo play thanks to pet tanking and solid self-healing. Provides group utility through Demonic Gateway and Soulstone. Some of your weaknesses is that you're not going to have any sort of damage immunity. Another weakness is there is a DPS ramp time that is notably higher than other specs. You do need some setup time. And then finally, low burst damage outside of cooldown windows in most situations. So let's talk a little about stat priority. So intellect is going to be your primary stat. It should always be prioritized. It directly increases your spell power and all damage done. For secondary stats, both hero talent builds share the same priority. Intellect over haste equals crit, over mastery over versatility. Your mastery is going to increase the damage done by your demons by a percentage, which makes it valuable, but behind haste and crit given how heavily the spec benefits from casting faster and hitting harder during tyrant windows. Versatility is going to be your lowest priority, offering damage increase and damage reduction at half the rate. So let's talk about some of your core abilities. So you have Hand of Gul'dan. This is going to be your core Soul Shard spender. It deals AOE damage in an 8-yard radius and summons wild imps equal to the number of Soul Shards spent. Spending more shards on a single cast is generally better. We also have Call Dreadstalker, so summons 2 Dreadstalkers and is one of your highest priority abilities on cooldown. It also has a chance to generate Demonic Core procs when it expires. And then finally, Demonic Core, which is your most important proc. It reduces the cast time of Demon Bolt to instant and stacks up to 4 charges. Managing this resource carefully is very critical. You want to hold at least 2 charges going into every single Demonic Tyrant window so you can rapidly generate Soul Shards for more Wild Imps while that Tyrant is active. Then we have Shadow Bolt and Infernal Bolt. It's your filler when nothing else is available. With the Secrets of the Coven passive, Infernal Bolt generates 3 Soul Shards instead of 1 during certain windows, making it significantly more valuable in those moments. Now let's also talk about some major cooldowns here. So Summon Demonic Tyrant is your central cooldown and the entire spec is built around it. It extends Dreadstalker's duration when you have Reign of Tyranny and it gains a damage modifier for each active demon. The goal of every Tyrant window is to have as many demons on the field as possible. Stack Wild Imps, have Dreadstalkers active, and burn Demonic Core charges to generate more shards for additional Wild Imps mid-window. Now for your choice note cooldowns, we have Grimoire Imp Lord or Grimoire Fell Ravager. Imp Lord is going to give you on-demand self-dispel on cast, and also access to Singed Magic, a party dispel while on cooldown. Fell Ravager is going to interrupt your target on cast and grants access to Spell Lock as an additional interrupt while on cooldown. Fell Ravager tends to be the more common pick simply due to the interrupt value in most content. We also have Implosion, so Implosion is going to be your dedicated AoE button. It consumes up to 6 Wild Imps to deal burst AoE damage on a 15-second cooldown. Always aim to implode with the maximum of 6 Wild Imps. In a pinch, it can feel fine with fewer, but you should treat 6 as the baseline target whenever possible. Number 4, we have Summon Doomguard. This is a powerful AoE cooldown capped at 5 targets, useful anytime multiple enemies are present, but be aware it will never damage more than 5 targets at the same time, regardless of how many enemies around it. And then finally, we have Fellstorm, which is a little bit more advanced for min-max players. So turning off autocast on Fellstorm in single target situations can be a minor DPS gain, as the energy spent on Fellstorm takes away from Legion Strike cast and additional melee swings. This is an extremely minor optimization. If you disable autocast and then fail to manually cast, when 2 or more targets are present, the trade-off is often a net loss. Okay, let's talk about your opener. This is going to be the Diabolist opener for Mythic Plus. Again, the talents will be in the description of the video if you want to check that out. So the opener is designed to get as many demons on the field as possible before Demonic Tyrant lands, maximizing the damage bonus it receives for each active demon. So Power Siphon at 5 seconds pre-full is the first move because it sacrifices 2 Wild Imps to immediately grant 2 Demonic Core charges and buff your next 2 Demon Bolts to deal increased damage. You're doing this before the pull because your Wild Imps passively regenerate up to 3 Soul Shards out of combat, which also means you will have Imps already spawned and ready to sacrifice. Doing this early means Power Siphon is available again sooner into the fight, and you enter combat with 2 ready Demonic Core charges and buff Demon Bolts waiting. We also have the Precast Shadow Bolt. This is simply making use of dead time on the pull timer. You are not wasting a global. The cast is already in flight when the combat begins. You get free damage and start generating a Soul Shard before anything else has happened. From here, you want to Grimoire Implore immediately on pull. Get your 2-minute cooldown started as soon as possible so it comes back sooner in the fight. It also does a solid chunk of upfront damage. More importantly, casting it now means it is not competing with your other cooldowns later in the opener window. Up next, we have called Dreadstalkers because you want your Dreadstalkers on the target before Tyrant lands. Again, Demonic Tyrant gains a damage modifier for every demon active when summoned, so having Dreadstalkers already attacking when the Tyrant arrives directly increases its damage output. With Reign of Tyranny talented, Tyrant also extends Dreadstalker's duration, meaning they stay on the target longer through the burst window. Up next, you want to summon your Demonic Tyrant immediately while the Dreadstalkers are fresh. At this point, you have Dreadstalkers active and Wild Imps either already spawned or arriving shortly from your pre-pull shards. Tyrant landing now captures all that demon activity and amplifies it, and Abyssal Dominion further increases Tyrant's own damage and pushes your demons to deal 20% additional damage on top of its baseline 50%. So the sooner Tyrant is active, the better. Up next, we have steps 6 and 7. So cast Hand of Gul'dan into Demon Bolt. This is going to be repeated across 4 cycles, and this is where the real engine kind of kicks in. Each Hand of Gul'dan cast summons Wild Imps scaled to the shards spent, feeding more demons into the Tyrant window. Between each Hand of Gul'dan cast, you burn a Demonic Core charge with your Demon Bolt, and this rapidly cycles Soul Shards back to you so you can immediately cast Hand of Gul'dan again. The Demon Bolts are also dealing increased damage from the Power Siphon buff that you set up pre-pull. This loop of Hand of Gul'dan into buff Demon Bolts is the core engine of the spec, and you're running this at full efficiency here because Tyrant is active and amplifying everything. Then finally here at the end we have Infernal Bolt. So this signals the Secrets of the Coven, meaning Demonic Art, Mother of Chaos has triggered from your Diabolic Ritual stacks built by spending shards throughout the opener. When Mother of Chaos is active, Shadow Bolt transforms into Infernal Bolt, which generates 3 soul shards instead of 1. So casting it here converts that proc into those 3 instant shards, fueling additional Hand of Gul'dan cast as you transition into the normal priority. One thing to note here as well is after step 5, this is typically where you're going to send your trinkets, your potions, whatever you have that can amp your damage. You want to send that in your Tyrant window. Okay, so this is going to be your single target priority, and single target is a priority list rather than a strict sequence like we just talked about. But understanding why each ability sits where it does makes this a little bit easier to execute. So we have that Power Siphon, once again, sitting at the very top. This is going to convert those 2 Wild Imps into 2 Demonic Core charges, and it's going to buff those next 2 Demon Bolts. And right here, this is just pure efficiency. You're converting a resource you have in abundance, which is Wild Imps, into a more powerful resource, buffed instant cast Demon Bolts, while also setting up your next shard generation cycle. So it's very important not to miss a Power Siphon cast. This means wasting time essentially with slower unbuffed demons and lost core charges, and this will compound throughout the entire rotation. So make sure you're sending Power Siphon on cooldown. Up next, we have Call Dreadstalker second. This is your hardest hitting summon on a short cooldown, and its expiration also has a chance to generate more Demonic Core procs. And this feeds into that Diabolic Ritual by spending soul shards, pushing you towards the next Demonic Art proc. With Carnivorous Stalkers and Flame Touch talented, your Dreadstalkers also recast Dreadbite more often and attack faster, so getting them on the target early in any sort of priority cycle matters a lot. Always cast this on cooldown. Then we have Hand of Gul'dan and Ruination third, and this is number 3 because spending soul shards here summons Wild Imps and progresses your Diabolic Ritual stacks. Again, the more shards you spend on a single cast of Hand of Gul'dan, the more imps you summon at once. We also have the Glumina talent, which increases Hand of Gul'dan damage based on the number of shards spent, so 3 shard casts are preferable when available. And then we also have Ruination, so your Hand of Gul'dan will transform into Ruination, which deals extra damage and summons 3 additional Wild Imps on top of the normal shard scaled imps. Cast it exactly like Hand of Gul'dan, but also enjoy the bonus output that you get from this. The number 4 spot, we have our Imp Lord or Fel Ravager, depending on what you picked. This is to get those 2-minute cooldowns rolling. So beyond the damage that it deals, having it on cooldown means Singe Magic or Spell Lock is available to you passively, which of course has a ton of value in Mythic Plus. In the number 5 spot, we have our Summon Demonic Tyrant. So by the time you reach Tyrant in this priority flow, you should have Dreadstalkers on the target, Wild Imps from Hand of Gul'dan, and at least a couple Demonic Core charges held in reserve. Again, remember that Reign of Tyranny does extend Dreadstalker's duration when Tyrant is summoned, and at the moment that Tyrant lands, you start burning through Demonic Core charges with Demon Bolt and just rapidly build more shards and spend with Hand of Gul'dan. Up next, we have our Summon Doomguard. This will deal consistent damage for us for its duration, and each Demonic Core you consume reduces its cooldown, meaning strong core management naturally will bring the spell back faster. Next priority is going to be Demon Bolt with Demonic Core procs, and then step 8 is your Shadow Bolt and Infernal Bolt fillers. So the AOE priority uses almost the same buttons as the single target, but reorders a couple priorities and adds in one new thing here called Implosion. So the logic shifts from maximizing sustained single target tyrant windows to burst dumping imp stacks as fast as possible across multiple targets. So let's start out with Implosion here. So it converts up to 6 wild imps into burst AOE, and the reason this is your top priority rather than a situational button is that wild imps have a limited duration and they will expire naturally. So Implosion converts that expiring resource into damage before it is lost. Always wait for 6 imps before firing when possible, as the damage scales directly with imp count. Spiteful Reconstitution increases Implosion's damage and gives you a chance to summon a wild imp when consuming Demonic Core, creating a small feedback loop where your shard generation also occasionally refills your Implosion stacks. Sachiel's Volition also gives imps that are imploded a chance to generate Demonic Core charges, tying Implosion directly into your proc resource as well. Next, we have Summon Doomguard. So this moves to second in AoE because unlike single target, where it's a background cooldown, against multiple enemies it becomes one of your strongest damage tools. It fires AoE bolts hitting up to 5 targets at the same time, and with Demonic Core consumption reducing its cooldown, strong AoE pulls naturally bring Doomguard back faster from the volume of core usage. So you're going to fire it as soon as possible in any sort of significant AoE situation. Up next is called Dreadstalkers. So this is going to stay high for the same reasons as single target. It's a strong summon, it builds Diabolic Ritual stacks, and its expiration generates Demonic Core procs. And Dreadlash also gives Dreadstalkers an AoE component, so still very strong in AoE just like in single target. Up next we have Hand of Gul'dan and Ruination, and this is what's going to kind of feed your loop of Implosion, right? You're spending charges to generate imps and then you implode them. So Hand of Gul'dan and Ruination are going to generate those charges for us. Your next priority will be your Imp Lord or a Fel Ravager, depending on which one you picked. And you want to follow that up, of course, with a Demonic Tyrant. Tyrant in a large AoE pool can be one of your biggest damage spikes in the game if it is set up correctly. If you skipped over the single target section, we did talk about that a little bit more in that section, but it serves the same purpose in the AoE priority. And finally, here at the end, we have Demon Bolt with Shadow Bolt. Right, Demon Bolt's going to build those charges that we will then spend with Hand of Gul'dan up above, and then we fill with Shadow Bolt and Infernal Bolt. Okay, so Demonic Core management. So Demonic Core is going to be the most important proc in your kit. We kind of talked about that earlier. It stacks to a maximum of 4 and should be actively managed rather than consumed on cooldown. So you have a few guidelines with this. You want to have at least a minimum of 2 charges going into every single Demonic Tyrant window. Never set at 4 charges, you will waste procs. 2 charges banked is typically the sweet spot between both availability and efficiency. And in AoE situations, consider using Demonic Core charges to spread doom across multiple targets, since each application ticks independently for additional AoE damage. So you can kind of tab target between multiple mobs, send out those different Demon Bolts, and in my opinion, it's a fun little mini game to play to just kind of sort of min-max your damage. You will see a decent uptick in your damage doing this. Next, you have your utility and defensive toolkit. So Unending Resolve is going to be your major defensive, reducing damage taken and making it immune to spell interrupts. Very, very important in specific dungeons. And also with the Diabolist Infernal Vitality, it also heals you for 30% of your maximum health over its duration. We also have Dark Pact, so sacrifices a portion of your own health for a large absorbed shield and can be used even while stunned, making it one of the more reliable panic buttons in the game. Up next, we have Soul Leech, so this provides a passive absorb shield from single target damage, enhanced further by Demon Skin for passive regen. After that, we have Drain Life, so drains your target and returns health to you, doubled up by Infernal Beneficiary. and Gorfine's Avarice if talented. There's also Create Healthstone, so restores 25% of your health on use. If you take Pact of Gluttony, it upgrades to a Demonic Healthstone, usable multiple times per encounter with an added healing over time effect. For mobility, you have Demonic Circle. This is going to be your personal movement tool. Drop it somewhere safe before a fight or during positioning phases, and teleport back to reposition or shed movement impairing effects. And then finally at the bottom here, we have Fear, Curse of Weakness, Curse of Exhaustion. This will round out your utility for slowing, fearing, and weakening enemies. And Foul Mouth applies any curse cast to all enemies within 10 yards, which is very strong in packs. Okay, then last thing we're talking about here is recommended macros. So we have the Soulstone on mouseover. So cast Soulstone whenever you mouse over somebody to cast it on them. One thing with Soulstone, if you are the only battle res in your group, always Soulstone yourself, because if you die and Soulstone's on somebody else and your team has 3 battle reses available, you're not going to be able to use them because you're the only B-res available and you will waste them all. Up next, we have Shadowfury at Cursor. So fires Shadowfury instantly at your cursor position without requiring manual reticle placement. We also have step 3 here, the all-in-one Healthstone. So automatically adjust between Demonic Healthstone and the standard Healthstone, depending on whether you have Pact of Gluttony talented. And it will also use Soulburn first if available. And then finally, we have the all-in-one Grimoire macro. So this prioritizes interrupting your focus target with Fell Ravager and dispelling your mouseover target with Implore, depending on which you have. Also works for Spell Lock and Singe Magic after the cooldowns are spent. We'll put these in the description of the video as well. Alrighty guys, that's going to be the end of this video. If you all enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. It really helps. See you guys in the next one. Peace.